I'm Allison. That morning, while making coffee in my small kitchen in a northern suburb of Chicago, I opened my email as usual. Amidst a flood of promotions and work reports, one subject line made me freeze. About the wedding from Holly. I clicked. Just one short paragraph. Please don't come, we're keeping the ceremony small so we'll live stream it. Here's the link, hope you understand. No invitation, no apology, not even a thank you. Just a cold hyperlink. I stood still holding the coffee spoon, feeling like someone had punched me square in the chest. Me, the person who had wired nearly $63,000 over the last 6 months to fund my sister's wedding, was being treated like a nameless outsider. Wasn't I the one who paid the deposit for the boutique hotel on Michigan Avenue? Wasn't I the one who ordered all the embroidered table linens, hired the premium videography team, and covered the fees for 3 different dress fittings? And yet, not a single printed invitation. I double-checked. No previous emails, no missed calls, no texts. Just one command, don't come. I leaned against the fridge, feeling my chest tighten, inch by inch. The coffee steam rose gently, brushing against my cheek as if to ask, "Are you okay?" I wasn't. My mom, Diana, was the only one in the family who ever called me when something major needed to get done. Lately, she had been asking me repeatedly to send more money to help take the stress off Holly. I had even paid for the engagement brunch. Over $7,800, including the garden rental and cocktail service team. I didn't regret the money, but in that moment, I regretted myself. I turned back to my laptop and opened the spreadsheet. Total, $62,740. All charged to my credit card. My name on every invoice. And in return? A livestream link, and an invitation to stay quiet. At that moment, I told myself maybe Holly was just overwhelmed. Maybe she didn't realize she had just pushed aside the very sister who had stood by her since her divorce at 24. All the way to meeting Nolan. I called, no one picked up. 30 minutes later, a message popped up from my mother. Holly needs some space. Don't make this a big deal. Everything's fine if you don't overreact. Overreact? Being told I was 3 weeks of unpaid leave just to help plan this wedding? Being told I was too sensitive for being kicked out like a late-paying customer? I didn't reply. I simply stood up, stepped out onto the balcony, and watched a sheet of dull clouds glide silently across the city skyline. Outside, Chicago buzzed as usual. But inside me, there was a stillness I hadn't known before. A stillness that wasn't peace, but the sound of something finally breaking. I used to believe that if I just kept giving, eventually I'd be recognized. But it turns out, when you give enough, people stop seeing it as kindness and start expecting it as obligation. And that morning, in a 7-line email, my sister made one thing clearer than ever. You're not necessary. I stood there for a long time before going back in and printing out every invoice, one by one. If they saw me as a walking wallet, then the least I could do was keep the receipts. That afternoon, I decided to drive to the tasting at Celestine Grove, the restaurant where Holly and Nolan's wedding reception would be held. Despite the cold email treatment, I still wanted to check things one last time before the final $7,200 payment went through. I told myself that if I was paying, the food shouldn't be terrible. The restaurant sat on the 3rd floor of a glass building in the Gold Coast, with a view overlooking Lake Michigan. Exactly the kind of place my mother would call elegant, but not showy. I arrived 20 minutes early, but as soon as I walked in, the manager, a young woman named Lexi, gave me a visibly uncomfortable look. "Are you Allison? I'm sorry, but Holly requested that this tasting be limited to people directly in the wedding party." I froze. "Can you double-check that, please?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. "I'm the one who paid for the entire reception package." Lexi glanced at her iPad. "I understand, but the list today only includes the bride, groom, bride's mother, maid of honor, and the event coordinator. Lydia. Lydia. The woman who always treated me like staff rather than the one footing the bill. Last time, when I gave input on the photo backdrop, she patted my shoulder and smiled. Don't worry, we've got it covered. You should focus on enjoying the moment, like a guest of honor maybe. Guest of honor? No name on the invitation, no part in the planning team, not a single decent photo. And yet, I'm a guest of honor? I turned and walked away without saying another word. As I passed the mirror in the lobby, I caught my reflection. Neat button-up, hair tied back, eyes still clinging to the hope that something might change. I looked at myself and saw someone. A few days later, I received an email from the wedding planner company, a final summary along with a link to the concept photo album from last weekend's shoot at a farm outside Naperville. I had paid nearly $3,500 for that shoot, including props and a stylist. I opened the album. 46 photos. I appeared in exactly one, standing next to the lemonade barrel, half my face cropped out, blurry like a background volunteer. The caption read, "So grateful to everyone who helped create this perfect afternoon." I read through every comment below. Stunning, Holly looks amazing. The bride's mom is so elegant. Love the bridal party, they nailed it. No one mentioned me. No one tagged me. I scrolled to the bottom. In the special thanks section, printed in pastel pink. Thank you to the bride's mother, Mrs. Diana, for your tireless support. Thank you to Lydia and the Sabon events team for crafting every detail. Thank you to Nolan, the incredible partner by Holly's side. I read it 3 times. My name wasn't there. That evening, I attended a pre-wedding gathering at the Harris residence, Nolan's parents' house. It was a cozy southern-sided dinner, white wine flowing non-stop. I got a late invitation from one of Holly's friends, along with a note. Just come for fun. Holly said you were probably busy, so didn't bother you with details. I found my name at table 8, near the restroom. Specifically wedged between a hallway leading to the supply closet and the emergency exit. The smell of disinfectant was so strong I had to lightly stuff a napkin near my nose. Next to me sat a distant relative of Nolan's I had never met, texting non-stop and referring to me as some cousin from the bride's side or whatever. I stifled a laugh, not because it was funny, but because if I didn't laugh I might cry. As the toast began, I looked across the room. Holly posed with Lydia under a glowing flower arch. My mother beamed beside Nolan. No one glanced in my direction. No one wondered why I was seated in the darkest corner of the room, next to a mop bucket and a mini vacuum. And that's when I realized they hadn't forgotten me. They had put me exactly where they thought I belonged. Behind the scenes. Not worthy of recognition, just barely enough to be used. I set my glass down, stood, and left the table. No one looked back, no one stopped me. I stepped out the front door into the crisp May air of Chicago. I wasn't angry, just hollow. A quiet kind of emptiness growing inside me like the dim banquet room I once thought I was part of. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I had just fallen out of the wrong dream. Everything in the apartment was still in place. The armchair by the window, the photo of my father hanging over the fireplace, the books neatly stacked on the shelf. But I wasn't intact anymore. The first thing I did was make an espresso. Strong, dark, no sugar. Then I reopened Holly's email and read those bland lines again. Like I needed to hurt myself into believing they were real. By then, I no longer felt hurt. I felt light. The kind of light that comes when someone finally drops the overloaded backpack they've been carrying for years. I texted Noreen, my best friend from college, the only person who ever knew me better than my own mother, and invited her for tea at the small shop near the public library. Noreen was the type who never asked, "What's wrong?" over text. She just sent a teacup emoji with 30 minutes. When I arrived, she was already seated in our usual corner, earth-toned beanie pulled low, steam rising from her Earl Grey. I sat down without needing to say a word. "You holding up?" she asked, eyes still on the tea stain circling her cup. "Allison," I shook my head. "I don't know, it feels like everything just collapsed, but somehow it's eerily quiet." Noreen studied me for a moment, then she said, almost in a whisper, "Allison, there's something I wasn't going to tell you, but now I think you should know." I stayed silent. "Last week, I ran into Lydia at a wedding planner networking event." I didn't react. Holly was there too. They were chatting with a group near the bar. And Holly, she laughed out loud and said, and I quote, "As long as my sister keeps paying on time, everything will keep looking perfect like this." It felt like all the air had been pulled from my lungs. Noreen gave me a sympathetic look. I wasn't far away. She wasn't joking. She said it like she was talking about a platinum credit card. I let out a laugh. Not loud, not bitter, just the kind of laugh people make when they realize they've been a fool for a decade. I thought of all the vacations I canceled to attend planning meetings. The nights I stayed up until 2 a.m. reviewing spreadsheets to make sure my sister had everything she wanted. The things I never bought for myself so I could fund her purple rose fantasy wedding she couldn't live without. I had always believed that if I just kept being kind, kept giving, I'd be loved in return. But now it was clear. To Holly, I wasn't a sister. I was a reliable financial stream. Noreen placed a hand on my shoulder. "You deserve better, you know that, right?" I nodded, though part of me still wanted to argue. That part whispered, "But they're family." Maybe Holly didn't mean it. Mom will be heartbroken if this blows up. I had defended them for too long. I had built my entire adult life on excuses for their behavior. I tightened my grip on my bag strap and stood. "Thank you, Noreen, for not letting me lie to myself any longer." On the way home, I didn't play music. I didn't make a call. I didn't check my phone. I let myself hear the sound of the cars, the wind cutting past the window. And another sound, clearer than the rest. The quiet return of my self-respect. That evening, I opened the folder labeled Holly Wedding, Finance. I reorganized every file, invoices, contracts, payment slips. Every word, every figure was proof I had been there. And when I scrolled to the line marked Final Payment, July 8, I didn't hesitate. Right-click. Select Cancel Payment. A confirmation box appeared. I clicked Yes. I didn't need to scream to let people know I was hurting. I just had to stop. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one keeping everything looking okay. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty about that. 3 days after I canceled the final payment, a cream-colored envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address, just embossed gold letters. Holly and Nolan's Wedding Program. July 15th, 1:30 p.m. I set it on the dining table and didn't open it right away. One question kept looping in my head. If I wasn't supposed to show up, why send me the program? It wasn't until that evening that I opened the envelope. A glossy booklet, thick cover, the kind of luxury design you'd see from a high-end resort catalog. The first page had a photo of Holly and Nolan under a lavender arch, arms wrapped around each other, staring into the camera with that diffused glow only designer wedding invitations can pull off. I turned to the second page. A heartfelt thank you to those who made this day possible. My mother, Diana, was listed first as the emotional anchor and source of unconditional love. The groom's family, the Harrises, were praised for their warm welcome and unwavering support. Lydia, the wedding planner, had her own dedicated paragraph. This day would not exist without her magic touch. I reached the final line of the acknowledgments. No mention of me, not a single line, not a hint or implication. I folded the page. My hands were dry but colder than usual. Not from surprise. From certainty finally confirmed. I stood up and made myself a cup of peppermint tea. On the shelf, the white porcelain mug that read, "Big Sister," a gift from Holly 6 years ago, still sat untouched. I placed it in a cardboard box and stored it on the highest shelf. That night, I got a message from a distant relative, cousin Eliza from my father's side. Someone I'd only seen at large family gatherings. Her text read, "Just saw your name on the wedding finance list. They took it down, but the old file is still floating. You really paid?" I replied, "Yes. Most of it." She sent back a smirking emoji. "They used a photo of you from the March fundraiser, the one where you're hugging Holly, said you were the amazing sister making everything possible. But now?" Crickets. I didn't respond. The image from that gala flashed in my head. I'd worn a simple navy dress, stood beside Holly as she held the mic, and told the story of her journey of love. I'd smiled, nodded, clapped at the right times. In hindsight, I was the perfect supporting character. On cue, on mark, and now. Edit it out of the script. The next morning, I visited the wedding website I'd paid to build, hollyandnolan.com, and checked the About Us section. Under Bride's family, there were only photos of my mother and 2 aunts. My name was gone. Under Contributors, only a few sponsors from Nolan's side were listed, plus small businesses offering percentage-based wedding gifts. I scrolled to the bottom. Special thanks, now listed, only Lydia, the wedding planner, and Sabine Events. I clicked Contact Us. A chat box opened. "We're currently offline, please leave a message." I closed the tab. The worst part wasn't being rejected, it was being erased, like I had never existed. The wedding day approached. No one from my family called to ask if I was coming. No messages, no confirmations. My mother didn't ask. Holly stayed silent. Nolan, the man who once cried when I helped restore his family's trust after his bankruptcy 3 years ago, couldn't even send a reminder. I took a walk around Lincoln Park, bought a lemonade from the small kiosk under the oak tree. The woman who ran it, Carol, a 60-something widow, handed me the cup and said, "I've always admired how you come here, never in a rush, never needing attention, and still carry yourself like someone who knows she's worth it." I thanked her and walked away. That's when it hit me. I had lived too long in relationships where giving was expected, and recognition was a luxury. They didn't see me, not because I was invisible, but because they were used to me standing behind the lights. But not anymore. No more Sister Allison summoned only when a card needed swiping. No more anonymous benefactor in the background. I don't need them to acknowledge me. I just need to remind myself I was there, I gave, and I am enough, even when they pretend I never existed. That evening, after leaving Lincoln Park, I came home, hung up my coat, and sat down at the desk where I'd once spent countless nights planning every last detail of Holly's wedding. My laptop screen was still glowing faintly. I opened the folder labeled Holly Wedding Contracts. The file sat there, neat and orderly. Just like the way I'd lived. Responsible, punctual, never in anyone's way. At the bottom of the budget spreadsheet, one line stood out like a period at the end of a sentence. Final payment, $38,900, due July 10th. It was a scheduled auto transfer that covered fresh flowers, staff for the main event, and the final installment for lighting and stage design. I looked at the clock. 11:14 p.m. 46 minutes before the system would process the payment. I clicked, Cancel Scheduled Transfer. A confirmation box appeared. Cancel payment? This action cannot be undone. I didn't hesitate. I clicked Confirm. The screen flickered, then went still. No fireworks. No drama. Just one number, no longer about to be deducted. I closed the laptop, stood up, poured myself a glass of water and drank slowly, as if reclaiming my body after waking from a long, uneasy dream. The next morning, I went to the same old bank branch where I'd opened my first account at 23, right after starting my accounting job at a private equity firm in River North. Carlos, the branch manager, recognized me instantly. He stepped out from behind the main counter and shook my hand with a warm smile. Several times a day. As Allison, long time no see, heading out on another work trip? I shook my head. No. I'm here to cancel all scheduled payments related to the event on July 15th. Under the name Holly Patterson. He paused briefly, then nodded. I'll take you to a private meeting room. We sat in a glass room adjacent to the VIP client area. I pulled out a folder I had printed the night before. Each contract with the florist, lighting company, backdrop supplier, event coordinator, and beverage vendor. I laid everything on the table, each page placed precisely like evidence in an investigation. Carlos flipped through the documents, brows furrowing slightly. Are you sure you want to cancel everything? Some of these vendors will apply penalties for late cancellation. I understand, I said calmly. I'll take full responsibility for what I signed. But I'm not going to keep funding something I've been excluded from. Carlos didn't press further. He nodded and began filling out the forms. I'll need your signature here and here. If you prefer, we can contact the vendors on your behalf. I paused, then shook my head. No need. Let the failed transactions speak for themselves. They'll catch on quickly. Carlos looked at me, this time longer, as if seeing someone entirely different from the woman he remembered. To be honest, he said softly, you don't look like someone going through a crisis. I smiled slightly and held his gaze. It doesn't feel like a crisis anymore, just reclaiming my voice. When I signed the last page, Carlos gathered the documents into a sturdy folder and stamped them with confirmation. We'll process these today. If there's any pushback, I'll notify you. I stood, thanked him, and walked out without looking back. Outside, the Chicago sun had begun to rise higher, streaming through the glass and highlighting the fine layer of dust on the waiting room table. I stepped onto the street without needing sunglasses. Life moved on as usual. Cars passing, people glued to their phones, the faint honk of a bus in the distance. But inside me, something had shifted permanently. They might think I ruined something special, that I sabotaged an important event. But to me, this was the first time I refused to be background scenery for a stage I wasn't invited to stand on. And I knew, whether anyone understood or not, this was the most right thing I had ever done for myself. The morning of July 15th began under a slate-gray sky, with clouds hanging low like a silent warning. I made coffee early, without an alarm. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. Everything was ready. On my terms. Across the city, at the Sinclair Hotel where Holly and Nolan's wedding was supposed to take place, the atmosphere was completely different. The decor team was scheduled to arrive at 6 a.m. to set up the floral arch, arrange silk chairs, and configure the lighting. But by 7:15, the wedding hall was still empty. The coordinator was making frantic calls. A confused receptionist flipped through a schedule printed with the wrong contact name. Lydia, the wedding planner, was visibly unraveling when the lighting company announced, "We haven't received final payment. Per contract, we cannot proceed." The florist, Dahlia Bloom & Co., emailed at 8:04 a.m. Due to a payment breach, Order 3321 has been automatically cancelled. My mother, Deanna, was fixing Holly's hair when she got a call from hotel staff. When she came downstairs and saw 4 lighting crates stacked awkwardly at the entrance, with a note that read, "Service will cease if payment is not received within 2 hours," she began to lose composure. By 8:40, Lydia called my phone. I didn't pick up. At 8:53, Holly called. Her name lit up on my screen. "Holly." I answered. "Allison speaking." Her voice came through sharp and panicked. "Allison, what's going on? They're saying you canceled the payments?" My voice stayed calm. "That's correct." "What?" "Why? This is my wedding. Are you trying to ruin it?" I stepped away from the table and walked onto the balcony, taking a deep breath. "No, Holly. I didn't cancel the wedding. I just stopped funding an illusion I was never invited to be part of." There was silence for 2 seconds. Then a loud crush. Probably someone dropping a box. "What the hell are you talking about?" Holly shouted. "This is my wedding. You already paid for everything, why pull out now?" I let out a quiet laugh. Precisely because I paid for everything, I have the right to stop. You didn't invite me. You didn't mention me. You erased me from this day. You can't delete my name from the program and still expect me to foot the bill. My mother grabbed the phone. "Allison, think this through. People are arriving, family is waiting outside. You can't just walk away." "I'm not walking away," I cut her off, letting my voice rise for the first time. "I'm simply done being responsible for the absence of love in this family." Her voice faltered. "But what will people say? They'll blame me, blame Holly. And have spent years protecting everyone's image, except my own." Silence. I ended the call. 10 minutes later, Lydia called back. No anger, no pleading. Just professional composure. "Mrs. Allison, I understand this is a personal decision. But I just want to confirm. None of the remaining balances will be paid, correct?" "Correct," I replied. "And I have copies of every contract that outlines that." "I've read them," Lydia exhaled. "They're lucky you stayed within legal bounds." I hung up and flipped my phone face down on the table. At the Sinclair, Holly sat on the floor of the bridal suite, makeup smeared with tears. My mother blamed Lydia. Lydia blamed unresponsive finance parties. Nolan said nothing, turning away as Holly accused him of doing nothing. The floral arch was never assembled. The stage lights never came on. Vendors pulled out, one by one. It didn't collapse with a bang, just a perfectly coordinated absence. And I sat at home, quietly finishing the novel I had left on the shelf for weeks, next to a cup of slowly cooling coffee. No gloating, no thrill, just silence. The kind of silence you earn when for the first time in your life, you stop trying to be someone no one acknowledges, just to protect what no one values. That afternoon, as I rinsed my coffee mug and got ready for a walk around the lake near my house, my phone rang. A sudden Zoom call popped up from a contact named Mom, Family Emergency. Hesitated. But then I hit join. The screen filled with familiar faces in small squares. My mom, Holly, Nolan, Aunt Carol from Iowa, Uncle Paul, my mom's older brother, and even Great-Uncle Rick, who only ever appeared at funerals. Before I could speak, my mom jumped in, her voice dripping with dramatics. "Allison, we need to talk right now. Everyone's really hurt. What you did, without warning, threw the whole family into chaos." "Chaos?" I raised an eyebrow. "I was cut out of the entire event. No invitation, no decent seat, not a single word of thanks. If today was chaotic, it was the result of choices you all made." Holly cut in, voice cold as stone. "You always make things complicated. You couldn't handle me having one day that wasn't about you. That's how you've always been. Competitive, jealous, selfish." I laughed. Not loud, not bitter, just a dry, short sound. "Jealous?" I said. "You think I sweat? Skipped work and spent nearly $70,000 just to sit near the bathroom at your wedding because I was jealous?" Every square on the screen went dead silent. "You pulled away," Holly pressed. "No one pushed you out. If you hadn't made it all about you, this day would have been perfect. I've planned for this my entire life." "Exactly," I said, staring straight into the camera. "And you forgot the most basic rule of planning a wedding. Being grateful to the people who made it possible." "I didn't ruin your wedding. I just stopped being an ATM that doesn't ask for receipts." Carol shifted awkwardly. "Maybe she just didn't know how to show her gratitude properly." "Aunt Carol," I cut her off gently but firmly. "I was cropped out of every photo, removed from the helpers list, and seated next to the janitor's supply closet. That's not an accident. That's deliberate erasure." Uncle Rick chimed in with his thick southern drawl. This Allison girl's always been fiery. If you treat your own family like this, who's supposed to trust you? I looked him straight in the eye, unblinking. I'm not doing this to be trusted. I'm doing this to be respected. Nolan, who'd stayed silent this whole time, finally spoke up. We're blaming the wrong person. Holly could have handled this better, sure. But Allison, all this could have been resolved with a conversation. You didn't have to blow up the whole event. I stared at Nolan. If the only time I'm worth talking to is when my payments go through, then I'm sorry, this conversation is already too late. Holly slammed her hand on the table, her face flushed red. You'll regret this. The whole family will remember what you did today. I didn't flinch. I let a beat pass. Then I spoke, slow and clear. No one here asked if I was okay. No one asked why I disappeared from everything. But the moment my card stopped swiping, suddenly, you all remembered I exist. My mother, trying to salvage control, said one last time. You're the rational one, you have to know how much your actions damage this family's reputation. I smiled, for real this time, not mockingly, just free. I don't live to protect the reputation of a family that only remembers me when a bill is due. I hit leave meeting. The screen went black, leaving only my own reflection. Not trembling, not sorry. Just a woman who had finally learned that silence, when prolonged, becomes complicity. That Monday morning, just 3 days after Holly's chaotic wedding, I left Chicago. No announcements, no goodbyes. I left the apartment keys with the building manager and activated a mail forwarding service to a P.O. box in Denver I'd registered online. On the Southwest flight at 9:15 a.m., I sat next to a woman knitting a scarf for her first granddaughter. She asked if I was traveling for business or family. I smiled. I'm on a break. She didn't press. I appreciated the silence. I rented a small studio on the 3rd floor of a red brick building near Capitol Hill. A quiet neighborhood, but not so still that it felt isolating. The apartment barely fit a twin bed, a desk, and one chair facing a tiny balcony shaded by old maple trees. Each morning, I brewed coffee with a small press, toasted bread, and opened the windows wide to hear the unfamiliar comfort of a new city. Joggers' footsteps, bicycle tires whispering on asphalt. The distant voice of someone calling for a runaway dog. No one knew who I was, no one cared where I'd come from. I didn't need to explain why I was here, no one asked. And that was exactly what I needed. I worked remotely for a small investment fund, part of the accounting team, so no one minded when I stepped away from the office for a while. They just emailed, kindly. Take your time, Allison, as long as your weekly reports are in. I submitted on time. Every number correct. But I didn't go beyond that. I didn't check the group chats. I didn't respond to dinner invites. I let myself float in a space that was enough. Not too much, not too little. In the evenings, I walked through Cheeseman Park, sat on a bench under the hawthorn trees. I brought a thin book. Not to read, but to keep my hands busy. To stop myself from grabbing my phone, rereading old messages, or opening photos that made me question everything. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need Holly to call and admit she was wrong. I didn't need a long message from my mother saying things went too far. I just needed to not be used anymore. One Saturday afternoon, while sipping tea at a small cafe called La Rue, a haven for freelancers chatting and working, I got a text from an unknown number. I'm sorry. I never meant for things to get this bad. I was just under a lot of pressure. I know I hurt you. If you'd just talk to me once, I'll listen. I stared at the screen. No name. But I knew it was Holly. I didn't reply. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I was just done letting myself be hurt. I turned off my phone. A breeze slipped through the window, lifting the edge of the thin scarf draped over my lap. Outside, a young couple laughed with their dog, tossing a frisbee as it leapt mid-air to catch it. They clapped like it was the best thing they'd ever seen. I wasn't jealous, I wasn't sad. I just watched them, like someone watching a stage, from the back row. And for the first time in years, I didn't try to step into the scene. After 19 days in Denver, I no longer jumped when my phone buzzed. I no longer hoped a message would fix the unfixable. At the airport, I sat watching the board scroll destinations: New York, Portland, Los Angeles, Austin. I wasn't flying back to Chicago. I wasn't going to anyone's home. I was returning to a place I'd forgotten. Myself. Not an escape. Not revenge. Just a decision. That from now on, I didn't need permission to exist in anyone's life. I didn't need to be accepted. I just needed to be left in peace. I returned to Chicago on a morning drizzled with soft rain. The kind that dampens the pavement but doesn't send people running. The city was still the same. Loud, rushed, indifferent. But I wasn't the same woman I was 3 weeks ago. I opened the door to my apartment, the same one I had left like I was fleeing something. Everything was in place. But it no longer felt temporary. I pulled the curtains, opened the window, and let the crisp air drift in. I made tea instead of coffee. I didn't need energy. I needed quiet. Over the past 3 weeks, I had a lot of time to think about all the years I spent keeping the peace. I used to think silence was a form of kindness. That not reacting showed maturity. That compromise was wisdom. But now, I understand. Silence, kept too long, is not grace. It's erosion. It's how you vanish in others' eyes, and then, in your own. I used to be the one who held things together. The bridge builder in every tension. The strong older sister who handled everything. I once texted Mom happy birthday on Holly's behalf. I booked Aunt Carol's flight, arranged hotel rooms for distant cousins. Even paid Nolan's leftover DJ fee. Without anyone knowing. And all those years, I asked for nothing. Until my silence became expected. Until my absence wasn't noticed. Except when a bill was unpaid. I picked up my phone. 2 unheard voicemails, one from my mother, one from Holly. I didn't press play. I saved them into a separate folder, labeled, "Not Ready Yet." Because I didn't need to hear them, to know what they'd say. I didn't need more excuses. I didn't need another, "We were just trying to keep things light for the family." I didn't need a lukewarm apology after 3 weeks of prideful silence. And I didn't need revenge. I just needed to stop paying the price for the role they assigned me. The strong one, the stable one. The one who never needed to be asked if she was okay. That afternoon I walked to the park near my apartment. The same one I used to visit after work with a book in hand. The breeze carried the scent of freshly cut grass and the laughter of children, playing in the distance. I sat on a bench, holding a cup of hot tea from the cafe on the corner. No one knew I had abandoned a wedding. No one knew I was excluded from the very event I helped build. With my money and trust. And no one needed to know. Because what mattered was this. I knew. I knew I was no longer the woman who stayed silent to be accepted. I wasn't trying to prove I deserved to be there. I wasn't looking for a place in a room that always tried to edge me out. I wasn't stepping away from my family, I was stepping toward myself. And if anyone ever asked, I wouldn't hesitate to say, "They said I ruined the wedding." I say, I saved myself. Allison's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes the bravest thing isn't to forgive or endure, it's to walk away from the rules others have forced upon us. In real life, if you've ever been seen as the reliable one, who doesn't need support, remember this. Silence isn't always noble. Sometimes, it's the trap that erases you. You have the right to set boundaries, to stop giving unconditionally, and to choose yourself, without apology. What do you think about Allison's decision? Was she too harsh? Or was she finally just protecting herself after too much hurt? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more deeply moving family stories.